You may be seated. This past couple days, as I hope some of you did, I got to go see my family in Tennessee. And as probably many of you do, we have kind of a blended family from here and family from there. And about 10 years ago, my mom remarried, and my whole family is German. But my mom married a Norwegian. And so ever since then, for 10 years, we've been learning more and more about Norway. We've been learning about the culture of being Norwegian. We've been learning about the foods of Norway. Not a fan. It involves a little too much fish and a little too much fish for breakfast. My stepdad, who is so wonderful and so generous, will get up in the morning and say to us, are you sure you don't want some caviar? In the little tube. This is not the fancy caviar. This is Norwegian caviar in a little toothpaste tube that you put on a bagel. I'm not making this up. If some of you are Norwegian, you may be familiar with this. I was not. We're more of a sausage people, my family from Germany. Sausage is totally fine for breakfast. The fish, I'm still getting used to after 10 years. But we've learned a lot, and they've taken several trips to Norway. They have a cabin, their family in Norway, and they just got hot water last year, 2012. My mom, I think, had a little something to do with that. They go for a whole month, and they used to bathe in a stream. Norwegians, I have learned, they are tough people. My stepdad is a son of Norway. And they talk about, Garrison Keillor talks about this a little bit, about how when Norwegians get mad, they go cold and stony silent with anger. You will never know when they are angry. You will never know when they are cranky at you because they'll just smile more. Something I learned about Norway this past week as well is that there is a little village in Norway that doesn't see the sun 6 months out of the year. And this is not because of the sun's rotation. They're not up that high. It's because they're in a valley. There's two giant mountains. This is how Norway is. And there's a little village down in the valley. Somebody figured out how to do this hydroelectric thing. And so there's been a village there for several hundred years. And for 6 whole months, the sun does not reach into this valley in Norway. Now, because Norwegians are Norwegians, nobody ever complained. Nobody, really talked about it too much. They just looked forward. They knew the exact date when the sun would come back. It was March 12th. And they all had that date marked on their calendar as the first time when you didn't have to walk way, way up into the valley to actually see the sun. Now, I can't imagine this. But I can imagine the Norwegians saying, well, it's fine. It's just the way it's always been. It's the way we've always done it. And if the sun isn't there, then that's the way we're supposed to live. But somebody had an idea. And they decided what they were going to do is they were going to get like this town in the Italian Alps they had heard about. This inventor decided, what if we put up a giant mirror? And if we put up a giant mirror at the top of this mountain that would reflect the sun down into the valley, they wouldn't have to be without the sun for 6 months. I think this sounds like a great idea, right? They put this mirror up at the top, but because they were Norwegian, there was some resistance. Even though this sounds like a wonderful idea, they of course said, well, who's going to pay for this? Just like the rest of us. Well, I don't miss it that much. They said, well, we can look up there. The sun's right there. We know it hasn't gone anywhere. But somehow they pushed this through, these Norwegians, by some miracle. And they put up this mirror. It's 3 giant mirrors at the top of the mountain that reflect the sun's rays down into the valley. And instead of making it, a bowl shape or something like that, they make it so that it directly reflects the sun's rays down into this valley. And so there's a spot on the town square where there is sun, where you can go and stand and be in the sun those 6 months out of the year. So the people were resistant, but they came to see that this was something that they needed and didn't know it. I want to share with you some of the things that they said because they're so fantastic, so Norwegian, and so beautiful. A retired secretary said, "People sort of get used to the shade. You end up not thinking about it really, but this is so warming, not just physically, but mentally. It's mentally warming." Young mothers, it talks about, wheel their strollers into the sun to give their babies some sunlight. Those poor babies that were born during the winter and have never seen the sun, if they're under 6 months old, they wheel them into the square so that the sunlight can hit their babies for 10 minutes a day and they can get that precious vitamin D. It says later in the story that seasonal affective disorder is so prevalent in Norway, even though nobody talks about it, that the governmental health center has a whole treatment center for seasonal affective depression at the beach. And that was one of the arguments to bring this sunlight down into the valley because it would be much cheaper than treating all these people that never saw the sun. Somebody was pushing their child's buggy and said, "It's not real sunlight, but it's very like it, like a spotlight. Those days right before the sun comes back are the worst. You look just a short way up the mountainside and the sun is right there, so close you can almost touch it, but not here." There were some older folks. Somebody says, "I was strongly against it." It's got to be that guy, right? Somebody says, "I was strongly against it." He thought maybe we could resurface the roads. Maybe we could do something better with our money. But he says, "I still have my doubts about the ongoing maintenance costs." We all know this guy, right? But he says, "Well, it does feel nice standing here. And really, you just have to look at people's faces," he says. Somebody says that was totally unimpressed. He says, "What it was, I think," he says, "is that living in the shade must make you afraid to dream of the sun. That's the only way I can explain the resistance, like the valley walls, minds without sun, somehow become a little bit narrower." I read this story and I heard the words of Isaiah. "The people that have walked in darkness have seen a great light. The people who have walked in the valley of the deep darkness, on them light has shined." Literally, for the people of Norway. They're in a valley of deep darkness. On them, light has shined. They didn't even know how bad they needed the light. Those of us who are here, we've seen the light this Christmas. If you are here this morning, you've probably seen and heard about the light multiple times because we need to. We're like those people who want that sunlight so bad, even though we're pretty sure that we can live without it. We can be stoic. We can say, I don't need that. But just like that Norwegian engineer, it feels pretty nice to stand in the sun. When we're here, we know that we need the light of the sun shining on us. We know that even though sometimes we're afraid to even dream of a life with that light shining on us, we know that we need it. And because we've seen it, because we've experienced that light at Christmas this season, now we are the mirrors. There are places in this world, and you know them, where the light has not shined yet. There are places in this world that are still places of deep darkness. And they're here in Marietta, and they're probably here in this room, and they're across the world too. But now, because we have seen the light, we are now the mirrors that can reflect that light into the places where people are afraid to even dream of that light coming. I've learned about Norwegians, and we know that even though they say they're okay without it, We all need that light. We need the light of the sun shining on us. And so now, you are the mirrors. Embrace that and remember it and know that you can reflect the light of the sun into those places where the light doesn't go. Amen. Let us stand.